Hi there, it's Sheila and welcome to your second pendulum class. So in the first class we talked about why use a pendulum. We covered the difference between subconscious messages and how to hold it. We also talked about communicating with light beings. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the different types of guidance and the different ways in which you can connect. So the first thing we want to reiterate is that if you can't get on with a pendulum, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It should be an extension of your own intuition. If working with a pendulum doesn't feel right to you, what I'm asking you to do is to ask your questions directly to a light being that you trust and trust the answers you get. Several of my lovely students struggle with pendulums despite all the teaching, and yet when they ask a question to Archangel Michael, they get a very straight yes, no, or I don't know. Okay? So don't discount your natural connection. And if you are told something that doesn't sit right with you, you need to trust that. Okay. So what we're going to talk about now is how you know that it's a light being or a loved one. Number one, if you've asked that light being to be with you, it will be them. When it comes to calling in a loved one, they may or they may not come. And using pendulums with a loved one depends on their capacity to communicate with you, and that capacity is greater if they have crossed over to the light. So if your loved one hasn't crossed to the light, you can still get answers about them from an archangel, and the archangel can even speak to that loved one for you and act as the mediator, the middleman. But it is down to the spirit whether or not they can connect and whether or not they will. So for me, if I'm wanting to say connect to my mum, who has been in spirit for a very long time, because she's so busy, it's usually a telepathic connection. My mum doesn't like using pendulums. She will only come in and work with me through a pendulum if it's very, very important. So my mum favours telepathic communication than she does floating in my aura and communicating with me very slowly through my hand. But you know, she was very verbal like me and she never did anything slowly. So if you are wanting to work with a loved one, the same steps apply. Ask Archangel Michael to connect and protect you and seal the session and to cleanse and clear your pendulum. If you then say, I want to speak to, and you give the person's full name, if your pendulum starts to move, you need to say, is this? And use the full legal name. If you do not use the full legal name, use the name that you know them by. But you need to double check that it's really them, because if they haven't crossed over to the light, or if your aura is very not secure, it can be an earthbound spirit or even an entity impersonating them, which means that you might get a bunch of messages that either upset you or are inaccurate or that just confuse you even further. So when you're asking a loved one to be with you, if your pendulum starts to move and you start getting messages, you need to ask the question, because they may not be a being of the highest light. If they haven't crossed over to the spirit world, they may not be a being of the light, but that doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean they're dark, okay? They're just human, but just without a body. They haven't ascended yet. So if you say, are you the highest being of light? If you're not, they must go. You know, if your mum hasn't crossed over to spirit yet, or if she's crossed over, but she's, you know, not considered a light being at that stage in whatever way, they'll leave. So what you need to do, knowing that you are protected, is you need to say, are you who you say you are and I believe you to be? So are you Joanne Smith, or are you the Joanne that I believe you to be? You should get a yes. If you get anything but a yes, don't communicate anymore, because it can be an earthbound spirit or an entity messing with you. If your pendulum gets very, very heavy as you're using it, if you drop your pendulum, that is usually either your guides making you drop it because there is an entity there, or there is an entity or an earthbound, which is why it feels heavy. If the pendulum keeps dropping, end the session, clear your pendulum, clear yourself, come back at another time. How does false guidance show up? Okay, so obviously if the guidance is pushy, if the guidance feels wrong to you, if it feels confusing, if it feels judgmental, if it feels sarcastic, even if your loved one was sarcastic in real life, they won't usually be sarcastic with you in spirit form, even if they're earthbound, because they will miss you if they are a loved one. The other thing that can happen, and we're going to move on to spirit charts in a minute, is that when you're using a spirit chart, the first half of the message sounds and makes sense, and then it starts not making sense, or it starts being judgmental, or the words don't make sense. That is a sign that it's not who you think it is. So if ever it's not who you think it is, don't keep asking questions, end the session. You can always come back 40 minutes from now, protect yourself, cleanse the pendulum, walk away, come back. Okay? So we're now going to go on to spirit charts. Now you can create many charts, and you can get pre-created charts. The one I'm going to show you, these are both hand drawn, is a percentage chart. Okay, so you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, or you could have hundreds. So if you want to use this chart, you need a reason why you're going to use it. Okay, so let's say you're working with an archangel, which is to begin with, which is, even if there is a spirit you really want to work with, I would start working with an archangel so you know that what you're doing is right. You place your pendulum over the center point and you place the chart outside of your astral body like this, okay? And then whatever subject it is you want help with, you ask the question. So you may say, what's the likelihood of me getting a promotion? The lower the percentage, the least likely it is. In how many months will I sell my house? Well, I'm getting 0 because obviously I'm not selling my house. Okay, so you can do percentages. The next thing I want to teach you is something called the many levels of yes. So nothing is absolute until it's happened, and then even perception differs. So until an event has happened, it is subjective. And just like with any betting, sometimes there is a very strong likelihood that something will happen, And sometimes it's up in the air, it hasn't been decided yet. And sometimes you will not know whether it's going to happen because the people involved or the powers that be involved do not know. Okay? So the many levels of yes at any point in time looks at the likelihood of something happening. So if you ask a yes or no question and you get an undecided answer, or you ask it several times and you get a yes followed by a no, followed by a yes, followed by a no, if for any reason you're doubting what you get, you can ask how likely something is. The rule is, if it is more than 80% at this moment in time, it's going to happen or it's going to occur. If it is less than 70%, it's unlikely. At this time, it is unlikely. So, you know, if I ask the question, am I going to write another book? It's 60%, which means at this moment, that's unlikely. So if I ask, is my new membership site going to be a success? I'm getting 100%, that's a yes. If I ask, is my daughter Jessica going to manage to go to college and stay at college? It's exactly 70%, which means at the moment it's a yes, it's likely. But a 70% yes is nowhere near as strong as an 80 or a 90%. So that's the many levels of yes. So you could use that to ask about a relationship. You could use that to ask about anything that you're getting unclear answers on. So the next type of chart that I'm going to teach you to use is the alphabet chart. Now, the way I've done this is A through to F, G through to L, M through to R, and S through to X with the Y and the Z at the bottom. This is not a Ouija. This is not a Ouija because you're making sure that you are protected and you are double checking that you are working with the being that you think you're working to. So I'm going to show you how this works, and what you'll see is you'll see it circling round, and you've got to use your common sense because the circles can go over two letters at once. Some of you will know what the message is saying before it's even got to the end of a word, right? If that happens, that's because your clairvoyance is already established. So for me, as I'm dowsing messages, I will already know what it's going to say before it says it, okay? But if when you're dowsing, you get anything which is unexpected, stop and check who it is you're speaking to, okay? That's the rule. So I'm now going to do a message from Archangel Michael to all of you. I am Michael. I put very great esteem in this work. You have help at your fingertips. Why not utilize it. Okay, so that's quite clear. It's a message from Archangel Michael. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to get a message from my mum. Okay, so I'm going to say, Eleanor Ann Smell, I'd like you to be with me. Can you tell me, are you here? It's not her. It's Orion. She is very busy. With putting indigo children onto Earth. Right, so apparently my mum's working. So that wasn't my mum, that was Orion, okay? But the message was clear, it made sense. Orion, can you just give us an example of a message that would start well and then not go well? So first of all, is this Orion? I am Orion. Okay, so give me an example of a message that would start well, but be a dodgy message. I tell you this to help you work with us. You have had too many hold you back. Your soul is partially stuck in space. So you can tell as I'm dowsing that my soul clearly is not stuck in space. I am very much here. And that is an example of a message that would not be of the light. Sounds good, doesn't end that way. So what I would do is I would say, Archangel Michael, please cleanse and heal my pendulum, and cleanse and heal me, protect and end the session. That's it. Okay, so you can use an alphabet chart asking anything. If you do not trust who you are communicating with, stop. Go away, come back. Okay, so what about getting information that you don't have? So what I will say to you is you can use either the percentage chart or the dowsing chart to get information that you don't have. But it is not a substitute for channeling with your higher self or your guides. It's not a substitute for trusting yourself. So one of the things I might do is I will connect to somebody's guide, but then I may just get their name using the dowsing. I might connect to somebody's life path and I may get the general message, but I might get specifics through dowsing. If I'm doing origin, somebody's origin, I may use dowsing because I don't always know the planets. But if you're not going to know the planet, you have to work with, does that feel right? And I would say if you're doing things such as looking at things you don't know, work with a light being that you trust. So if I was to say, Archangel Michael, can you tell me one of the places that I've been alive in that I don't consciously know about? By the way, a light being will always start with their name. I am Yeshua. I am Mary. Okay? They won't start with anything else. You were situated in Tanau. It's a star. High up in the Syrian constellation. You were a type of angel. Okay, so I've never heard of Tanahau. I've never heard of it. But because that's coming from Archangel Michael, I trust it. Is this Archangel Michael? Are you of the highest light? Yes. Okay. So we are going to do another class about pendulum healing and clearing. But this is the end of the pendulum spirit communication. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you need any more help, please do reach out and let me know. For now, I'm sending you all my love, lots of love, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.